to thank our sponsors who helped us put on these events. First being the Westside Church for bringing us this beautiful venue to host. St. Charles Health System for allowing us to put on some educational events during the day in a little bit different context. The Oxford Hotel, and also AirLink. So I'm going to turn over the mic for a few minutes to Kristen with AirLink, and she's going to share more about their services.
Hi, Mary, thank you. My name is Kristen Lingman. I work with AirLink of Bend, Oregon, and Klamath Falls. We've been in, can you hear me okay? Okay. We've been in Bend for 35 years. We're your air medical provider. And so what that means is that if you are in Prineville, or you're in Redmond, or you are somewhere away from Bend, and you need to get transported, we're your air medical provider. Or if you need to get up to OHSU, or down to San Francisco. And we work really closely with Bend, St. Charles, and with OHSU, and I have to tell you, I am so fortunate to be an Oregonian, as are you, because we have incredible systems here to support those who have had strokes. And we are so incredibly fortunate to live here in Bend, where St. Charles is, because they do a phenomenal job of really keeping themselves to be the very best of the best. And the same with OHSU. We're just really lucky to be Oregonians. So in that, I want to tell you a little bit about what we do, just so you know. So what it is we have a membership program. It's $85 a year, and what that does is if you need to be transported, it covers you and your family to be transported, and that's all you'll ever pay is $85. So if you and Joe and his best friend Vinny all live in the same house, all of you will be covered, right? So it's great. You don't have to worry about who's on your taxes or anything like that. It's $85. Now let's say accidentally you all three get into an accident and you're in your car, and we transport you by our helicopter, and we get you to St. Charles, and they decide you need an even higher level of care, we have to get you up to OHSU, or we need to get you to the burn center, right? Never gonna pay more if we transport all three of you now up to Portland. You will never pay more than $85, so it's a really good deal, because air medicine is really expensive. So my mission in life is to make sure that we get everybody covered that we can get covered, because for me, I hate getting those calls where somebody has a really expensive air medical bill, because it's so easily prevented, and it's so inexpensive, and it's done that intentionally and on purpose, so that we can get everybody covered. Now, if you don't have insurance, and that does happen to you, I want you to give me a call, because we're going to take care of you no matter what. And there are things that I can do. We believe in compassionate billing. We will never put a lien on your home. We will never do aggressive third-party billing, and I will work with you till the day is done, till we figure something out. If that's $1 a month for the rest of your life, that's fine. If I can get it written off for you, I will. Okay, so I don't want you to worry. I want you to get to the hospital, I want you to take care of you, and I don't want you to worry about money. Okay? Okay. Okay, and the last thing is, I just want to tell you a little story. I was up in Mount Hood, there was a big conference, and we had all the stroke doctors up there. And every time I see the stroke doctors, my job is to make sure that AirLink is really staying top-notch, right? And I went to the stroke doc, and I asked him every time that I see him, I'm like, what can AirLink be doing better? How do we be the very best provider we can be? And the doc said to me, Kristen, you ask me this every time you see me. He goes, I need you to know, if my mom was having a stroke anywhere in Oregon, you are the company I would call. You're doing just fine. So we want you to know we're going to do everything to take care of you and your family. And if I can answer any questions, I'm going to be in this back corner right here, and we'll take care of you.
Bring me home from anywhere.
That's right. Oh, I do want to tell you one thing. There's another program through AirLink and through the Air Medcare Network. It's called the Fly You Home program. Just a little bit different of a membership program, but no matter where you are in the state. So let's say that you were out in New York and something happened, you had an accident, right? And we needed to get you back to Bend because that reduces your costs with insurance companies and all that, and they want to get you back to Bend and back to your family, right? As long as it's a facility-to-facility transfer, so a hospital-to-hospital transfer, we will get you back here. It's a great deal, and again, that's about $180, a little more expensive, but no matter where you are in the country, we'll get you home. So, pretty good deal. So thank you again. And we have 320 bases across the country that we have reciprocity with. So if you're traveling And you have our membership, you have a membership of 320 bases across the country. So, yeah.
And we also have a partnership code right now where if you sign up for an AirLink membership, 12% of your membership fee is going right back into Stroke Awareness Oregon. So it's a great time to sign up as soon as you're done. So now we're going to move on to our main event. We're all here to see Ted Baxter. He was at the top of his game, a young man who rose through the ranks of the financial industry in record time. He worked around the world for firms like Price Waterhouse, Credit Suisse First Boston, and as managing director for Citadel. In 2005, he was young, he was healthy, he was successful, and he had a massive ischemic stroke. Instead of allowing this to bring his life to a screeching halt, his full-time job changed to one of rehabilitation and being the patient. Although he experienced physical deficits as part of his recovery, the main struggle that you'll hear about and read about in his book was his challenges with aphasia. And as a speech therapist, I can't let a captive audience go by without learning a little bit about aphasia. There's roughly 2 million Americans alone are said to have aphasia. It's commonly caused by a stroke or a brain injury. And there's a few things that I want you to take home with you tonight. Aphasia is a language disorder. It changes the way that the brain processes language. And so that can come across as understanding words, or it can come across as how a person produces words, or both. It's not a change in intelligence, and that's the number one thing I want you to remember. It changes your language, it does not change your intelligence. And we'll see that as Ted Baxter talks to you, as you read his book. It doesn't change intelligence. And he spent 14 years still recovering, but he's still making progress every day. We talked about that this morning. He's now an advocate, an author, a speaker. He shares education on strokes, aphasia. He inspires and motivates all around the country. He volunteers at health institutions and donates time to causes close to his heart. As part of his journey to educate others, he wrote down his story in the book that you see around the room, Relentless: How a Massive Stroke Changed My Life for the Better. It's really an incredible book. It's already changed the way that I do my job every day and what I think about when I wake up in the morning. They're going to be available for purchase after and for signing, so I'd really encourage all of you to check it out and to share it with others. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to our speaker for tonight, Ted Baxter.
I'm a stroke survivor, and I am the author of Relentless: How a Massive Stroke Changed My Life for the Better.
First of all, thank you so much for coming out here and supporting Stroke Awareness Oregon, and giving the opportunity to share my story, being a messenger of hope now, and providing awareness and education of strokes and aphasia for you. I'll talk about my stroke and some of my aphasia experiences. I'll talk a little about my journey so far and my book, which was published in July 2018. I'll leave about 20 minutes, maybe 25 minutes at the end to address some of the questions you might have. All right, so far I've learned a tremendous amount through this journey, especially about health, relationships, and giving back. I realized how I needed to take a look at my priorities in life and focus on what I valued most. It's taken a long time to come back to the society, due to my tragedy. But I'm grateful to have been able to overcome intense adversities, which you're going to see in a minute. I want to share what I've learned and to empower you to go out into the world with the knowledge and my experiences to refer to. Hopefully, if you encounter a similar situation that I had, and hopefully you won't, but maybe you know of somebody else that you know, you heard about this, that maybe he or she had a stroke, you will be able to navigate the process with more tools at your disposal. Okay, let's get going. Okay, I'll have to give you some background here before I go into the grid. I was a high-powered executive for a world-class investment firm based in Chicago. The name was called Citadel Investment Group, which still is called Citadel Investment Group. I was a global managing director for a premier hedge fund. And I was a global controller for the firm every day. I had a huge position, huge, one I loved. I had a ton of responsibilities, busy to the max every day. It was the pinnacle of my financial career. I mean, it really was. It was a dream job. And I couldn't pick another job that was better than that. But my job was super stressful. You need to be on your game every hour, every day, and I was. So what happened on April 21st, 2005, 14 years ago? Okay, I was only 41 years old. Okay, I finished my business trip that day in London, and I took a flight back to Chicago. Okay, that night I was watching television, The Apprentice of all things, with the commercials attached to that with my wife. She asked me a question, I didn't respond, and you would think that's a normal thing for the husband doesn't respond to a question. My wife is. So anyway, she repeatedly asked me that question, and still I wasn't responding. Like 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 times. I was just there. I just stared in space. My wife got up from her chair and came up by me, and at that point she knew something was terribly wrong. So I started to sweat, and a huge migraine had started in my head. I knew I was in trouble, and I experienced a black screen like that. So my wife called the police and the paramedics because she didn't know what was going on. I could hear words and sentences from the people coming on, coming up in the upstairs and downstairs, and there's a couple of guys with paramedics. They got all the contraptions with them, IV, all kind of stuff, and checked my blood pressure and stuff, which was starting to go very low. Like I think that the measurement that you usually use is the second of the blood pressure. Well, my blood pressure happened to be very close to 30. So anyway, the paramedics were asking me simple questions like, what is your name? Where are you right now? How many fingers am I holding up? And I didn't know they were talking about to me. At that moment, I lost the power of language. And I lost the power of comprehension, speech. I lost the mobility to move my right side of my body. So I didn't figure this out until later. But I was still there in the couch, just looking in space. I couldn't do anything about it. And just put yourself into my wife's shoes. Her, I couldn't imagine what she had to deal with. So everything changed in an instant. I had a massive ischemic stroke. So yes, I lost my ability to doing things that we take for granted, like shaving. Couldn't do that. Tying my shoelaces. I couldn't do that, but even that, I couldn't realize I couldn't realize I had to tie my shoelaces. I mean, that's a weird thing, but it's like I was just almost been born. I couldn't say, how are you? Good morning. I couldn't do any of that. So soon after, I really didn't know whether I could recover or how much. Figuring out the emotions aspect with the physical side and the language, it became a daunting life project. Okay, now before I go through with my journey, I want to tell you about my technical ramifications. Okay, there were two factors that were in play. Both were events occurred unexpectedly. Okay, without any warnings or preparation. I had a DVT, a deep vein thrombosis in my right shin. Okay, that broke loose, and that was the thing that created my blood clot in my right shin. Okay, and when that started to move, the other thing, the other event that was unexpectedly. I had a PFO, which is a hole in my heart, and nobody told me about this. My mother, was she alive? She didn't know about it either, and she didn't call me up and saying, hey, did you get your PFO checked? You know, whether you need one, I go, well, what do you have? I have it. Didn't. So I have that situation. So that is basically attracts the clot through my body, bypassing my lung, shooting the clot to my brain directly. And that's what caused my aphasia. Okay? Now the doctors that I knew, they told me that if that weren't the case, I would have had a pulmonary embolism, and I would have died. So I was saying, and I heard about this, and I was like, well, hooray for the massive stroke. This is great. Okay. Okay, so what my new journey started with the basics. Okay, because I'm going to tell you, I have 2 concentrations of I'm going to get better. So I spent 10 plus days in a hospital in a suburb of Chicago to diagnose, have the doctors to diagnose my stroke and that kind of stuff. So right after that, I was admitted into the Rehab Institute of Chicago and the city. I spent 8 weeks there as an inpatient. So I spent basically 2 days in the suburbs, and I spent 2 months in the city. After the doctors figured out that I have massive stroke and that kind of stuff, then my wife now knows that I had this thing that's called aphasia. I wasn't worried about that now. I was worried about, I focused on 2 things: my physical mobility, which I really couldn't use my right side of my body, and my speech, my language, and comprehension. Now, we know that, to go through this, my physical mobility was just tough to really get it come back where I am now. I have the same mobility pre-stroke. It's basically, it's not, but it would be to you guys and to the regular person, you know. Of course, you know, it looks like I'm a normal person. But when I go to the gym, every day, I'm always worried about that. I always have my right arm and my right leg always are behind with my left side. So I'm working on that every other day. I go to the physical facility. Okay, so I have a recovery, physical and aphasia. Okay, so as you can see, just from seeing this slide, I did a lot of different activities using different therapists, PTs, OTs, SLPs, different PhD students. Continuing education, a lot of continuing education courses with various friends, with my regular friends, with aphasia friends. I couldn't do the same activities every week. I like change. I like challenges, but not like this. So I had to figure out, and I did it with my wife. To use a recovery committee, like a virtual recovery committee, and I orchestrated the thing. Mainly it was me and my wife. And you need to be very smart about how do you use the therapist, and how you can use your various friends, and you know, where you go through some of these times where you need a caregiver. So my approach that I used was pretty much like brute force, and it's the only thing I can do, because there wasn't a person that is from Rehab of Chicago, or you know, is from Northwestern, or is from a hospital that I could pick it up and say, you know what, Ted, I'm going to help you. I'm going to give you. I'm going to make yourself better again. You need to do 10 things. Didn't work like that. So that was basically me and my wife and pretty much my friends and my family. So I'll take a couple of comments about recovery. One is time is brain. More time passes before a patient receives treatment, the worse the consequences will be. It didn't take me too long to figure out that my pace of doing my rehab would need to be like yesterday. In other words, get it done. Quick, fast, and thorough. So I was thinking about this, but I couldn't tell anybody, because aphasia, that happens to you. Now on the physical side, what I can say is it was crucial for me to exercise my body. That could take different forms, like jogging on a treadmill, or learning to swing a golf club, or doing Pilates. In other words, listen to the instructor and move your body as your instructor just told you to do. And this sounds like a simple of questions, or some simple instructions. Well, it's not so easy if you are aphasia. You have that aphasia with you. So if you can get it, if you use those things every time you do. You go into the Pilates, or you go to yoga or whatever. You'll figure it out, because you get yourself better, and that's both. You get your language. You feel alive, and it's going to help your physical body getting better. So, on the language side, let's talk about aphasia. Now, she mentioned aphasia, what it is. Unfortunately, I have aphasia, which usually comes with having a stroke. Right? You could get it from a head injury. You can get it for TBI, of that nature. To me, aphasia is an impediment of language, which that means to me, that means a little language challenges. Okay? So it's a different way to put it. Instead of using like, well, yeah, it's going to be a impediment language, it means I can't do it. And no, that's wrong. To me, that means it gives you challenges. So as she said there are 2.4 million people in the United States that has this. But I'm here, that's what I'm doing. I'm doing this presentations now for Newport Beach, Pittsburgh, Chicago. I've done this to Ann Arbor, Michigan, to tell people that, look, this is what aphasia is all about. And there's many types of aphasia. I started out with global aphasia. When I had my stroke, the pathologist came on to me and they diagnosed my speech. I had global aphasia. Global aphasia is the worst of the worst. So for the first year after my stroke, I could only say about 1,200 words. Now, just to give you some comparison, by age 4, a regular age 4, you have 4,000, 5,000 words on your belt. I was a guy that was just at a CFO. I had just been moved from partner, Pricewaterhouse, to Citadel. I have all that stuff, and I lost it all. And here I am trying to dealing the words of English. I have to get how do I say? I had to go from this table to the front door and stuff. It's crazy, but it's 1,000 words during the first year 1. So since then, I worked my tail off to improve myself, to communicate better. I worked as intensely as I did in my financial career. It's not insurmountable, but you need to practice religiously. Okay. But I knew at that point I couldn't go back to my old job. So while I was moving over, I figured out a way I could conquer small adversities. I also knew I'd have to change my new vocation. I just don't have the mathematical ability, nor the quickness. As a job of financial services, of the Price Waterhouse or a controller. So I had to figure out what my purpose would be in the world. Now, I wouldn't suggest a stroke for anybody, but because I had it, I needed a different life script, so if you will. So this is what I've done. So I consider this as like a guy, used to be a project manager, my many years as a Price Waterhouse. This is what I did. I started out with project planning formation. So what I do, for the first, I like volunteering and I'm giving back to the society. I'm leading small groups for what is called a communication recovery group at St. Jude's Hospital in Brea or Fullerton, California. It's in Orange County, working with 2 SLPs. I am one of the 2 SLPs. I'm helping people who had experienced a stroke and or aphasia or a TBI or a head injury, just like I had. Second, I wrote this book, which is Relentless. Now I've got that. Now I wrote this book and I published it, and now I'm using this as a way I can use this book as a launch pad to write new articles, blogs, various magazines, inspiration articles, of that nature. This gives me a way to talk about my experiences and spread awareness of stroke and aphasia. And I tell you, you guys, you have it all. You have this stuff down with Lorne. Doing the stroke awareness for Oregon. It's a great job, and what I can hope I can bring to this Oregon is I can bring the aspect of aphasia. So I can use this book as a way to use that. Okay, then finally, I like speaking. That's why I'm here. Now, I'm doing more speaking engagements lately. I've done podcasts. I've done 30 radio stations across the United States. Especially, I'm getting out there and in front of loved ones, caregivers, people who has both aphasia and some who just have stroke awareness. And I'm telling them that they can still improve themselves, and try to give them answers that I use on my experiences. So I'm trying to extend myself and to amplify my strengths and my capabilities, but my life is still evolving. Okay. Excuse me while I some water here. Okay. Now I put these two editions of my deck. These are a pretty cool idea that I came up with my speech coach. In February of 2013, I attended a professional development seminar. I learned about the wheel of life paradigm and how you might want to partition your life priorities using these categories. Okay, so I use the categories such as career, physical body, relationships, education, volunteering, etc. And how passionate you are relative to each category. So when I went to this professional development seminar, and the teacher asked me to name my priorities. Now this was before this is before I had before the stroke, right? And what I said, okay, my priority one, my priority was career. My number two priority was career. My 3 priority was career. 4 was sports. 5 maybe was wife or family. No wonder why I ended up getting a divorce. Just kidding. That's crazy. But it's too much of a focus on career. Physical body and health should have been number one. It should have been the one priority that I should focus my career rather me spending all my time to giving some concentration to the career. I should have had with a lot of physical body and health, especially with the work, long hours I was doing, and the travel requirements I was doing. Asia Pacific to Europe and Chicago, it's crazy. And of course, my wife and my family was nearly at the bottom of the list. So I mean, I messed up. I messed up. I had before I had before I had my stroke, I messed up my priorities. So my point is, if I had more of a balanced priorities scorecard like this, I probably would have had a different life. So after the fact now, because you can't change that, but I did recalibrated my life priorities. Some because I had to, because of health, and other priorities because I wanted to. So please check and review your life priorities ahead of time, because your situation actually requires it. Okay, I'm gonna wrap this up, and then you want to have some questions. Finally, before I wrap it up, I'm going to say he's one of my favorite quotes from the epilogue of my book. It's about the concept of adversity, and the quote is the trick to getting through the hardest times in life is to remember that there are many roadblocks along the way, but often when you conquer those obstacles, there is greater happiness awaiting you on the other side. Thank you very much. Okay, I'll take some questions.
Do I assume correctly that the occasion of your stroke and immediately following a 8 or 9 hour plane flight were not coincidental?
There are about 50% of doctors that took a look at my situation said that while that looks like that weren't the case, because my stroke it happened when I was at home and I wasn't on the plane. 50% told me that, well, it doesn't really matter that you took that flight that day. If you knew if it was going to happen, it could have happened that day, or it's going to happen 2 months from now. It doesn't matter. So what they told me is that it doesn't. You're going to have a stroke. So it's going to be because of those two things: my PFO and my DVT. So that's what I was told. Yeah.
I think I can go. Hey, I'm really glad you can speak again. Can you just tell us what it's like to be globally aphasic, or what it was like the first few months?
Yeah, the global aphasia. Because in my situation, I would right now my aphasia, where I've gotten to the point, I moved it from global aphasia to anomia aphasia. What anomia means? That means word finding. So that means not all of the time that I have to figure out where is that the right word or whatever. It's only sometimes. So that's what anomia aphasia is. Global aphasia is you can't even make you can only make like you can't use the words. You have it's very tough to get the words from your mouth. So what they use as for SLPs, they use this as utterances. So, and there's another way to. There's nothing way to say it, but then that's what you got to do it. So I went through the brute force form, and I tried to get it. Start to get it.
Did you understand what was going on at the time when you first were going through this?
It took me probably 3 months, 4 months to really figure out what's going on.
Thank you. Mr. Baxter, thank you so much for sharing this with us. And I read your book a couple of weeks ago, and I urge everyone here to read it because it's a remarkable story. And a lot of what he explains so beautifully in the book is that for these first few months, it takes that long to develop this understanding. And to have the anomia and to try to relearn words, he got kindergarten, first grade flashcards for school. And he relentlessly taught himself nouns,
Sure.
one at a time. And it's really a delightful description, and a lot of his recovery is related to his personality, which he didn't really talk about here tonight. But his tenacity, he talked about the brute force, but he had therapists wanted to set things up for 3 times a week, and he wanted 3 times a day. and he wasn't going to take less than 3 times a day. But the book is remarkable, and as a doctor, I've seen a lot of people go through all sorts of struggles, and our personalities are things that we're somewhat born with and somewhat shaped by our family and by ourselves. And I just want to thank you for sharing this incredible story and your remarkable strength, and I wish you well. And I think you should emphasize a little more. You touched on it here, but I don't know if everybody heard that you're still getting better. He's 14 years out, and each day, month, I mean, it's just remarkable, and it's a lesson for everyone with all the things that we may or may not have to fight through. But
Yes, thank you very much.
great admiration, Mr. Baxter.
Thank you very much.
Real quick, can you talk about maybe how writing played a part in your recovery?
Writing, sure, yeah. Yeah, with my writing, it has to go with my speaking. But I didn't realize at the time that I had a super, my SLP in Chicago. She was great. And the first time I went to her and she told me about speaking, how you can use different ways, different types of sentences to talk about this stuff. And she always, she had the small things that you never hear about this in the hospital, but you hear about this when you get a private therapist or a private therapist when it comes to your home or whatever. It's what I use as conversational learning. And so as I went to go to her like once every week, my speaking became pretty good. But the next month, my speech got very standard. I was always, there's nothing I can do to move it ahead. So, but I noticed at that point that my writing, and I had to, I was writing emails that I went to go to my SLP. I left her 2 emails, and she said to me at that point, she said to me when I saw her then the third one, she said, who wrote that letter? Who wrote that email? I said, that was me. She said, I know what's going on. Next month, your speak is going to get better than your writing, and then the next month after that, you're going to switch. First, your writing is going to get better than your speak. So there's no way she can tell me, you know, as, you know, how do you do that? Like, how could, like I went to, I said to her, I said, how do you do that? Like, how can, like, in January I want to be a good speaker, and February I wasn't a good speaker, and but February I was writing to write the passages of my book, and it was crazy. I couldn't figure out why one was better, the other one wasn't, and the next month I switched. So that's all I can say.
Thank you.
Have you had any experience, discussions, research on stem cells?
Yeah.
What is your thoughts?
Well, yeah, STEM. I have the doctor I used was a doctor from Chicago. He's the forward of this book, Dr. Small. He told me about it also, and he said this is going to be. He said to me, he said, I wish you didn't really have your stroke at that point. If you had it right now, I would give you some stem cells right now. But it was too early stages for him to tell me about. It's there right now that if you go to a doctor or a neurologist and you know that you have stroke, and you know it tells you that you can use I have another way I can get you better. It's too early stages that he has it right now.
When you say too early, you mean it's not in the developing
Yeah.
stage enough to really?
Yeah.
We have one more.
Yeah.
When you say you lost comprehension,
Yeah.
does that include the ability to read? And you talk about writing,
Yeah.
but
Mhm.
you could not read anything either?
Right. I couldn't read from the get-go, from after my stroke. When I used the recovery process, I always told my wife, look, I want to just look at visual things. So, when she got that, like, if I had a stroke right now, she would know exactly what I'm talking about. But at that point, she didn't know what I was talking about. So when I said visual, that means I want to look at Sports Illustrated, hiking. I want to the cooking. It doesn't matter whether I was into cooking or not, but I wanted to see what people are doing. So that's a way to get me back, get my brain to know that, okay, that's where I'm going. Does that answer?
Okay, we're gonna wrap
Thanks.
up for tonight. Thank you so much.
Okay.
That was really incredible. Thank you everyone for being here with us tonight. We have a small table set up in the back to learn more about Stroke Awareness Oregon, to purchase your copy of Relentless and have it signed over in this corner actually. And a few of us from SAO will be around for a little bit. If you have any questions, please tap us on the shoulder and ask. We'd love for you to be involved.
Answers your question.